All right. Hello, everybody. Andrew here, founder and CEO of Day One, and I'm excited for another episode of our Day One Founder Stories series. And I'm here with Farah Al Chamas, who is going to be sharing and telling us about her journey building a business, Ocala. So, Farah, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you and excited to have you tell your story.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for having me. And I'm really excited to rant.
I love it. I
I'm
love
joking.
it.
I'm
Rant,
joking.
commiserate, like we'll make it
It
real.
won't be a
That's
rant
that's why
session.
we do these to kind of hear some real stories and how it's been. And I know I've seen you building Ocala throughout the Day One Fellowship, as well as gotten to hear your story a few times. So I know how inspiring it is. But for everyone who's listening in, take us back to maybe the beginning. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about yourself. Where are you
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
from? What's some of your background? And then, we'll bounce into the idea, but tell us about
Love that.
yourself, Farah.
Love that. So I would say it started, I was born and raised in Syria, but I always say that my life started again when I moved to the US because it really launched me onto, a whole other track that I never even imagined was possible. My life today is so different. So I moved in 2013, the summer before my junior year of high school, midst of war, came here on asylum. Thankfully, had family that brought us in, and I ended up going to a high school in a very small town in Texas. And my first best friend, I found out about a month after we met that she was Jewish. There's a reason why I say this, because Ocala is named after her, actually. Um, and it was so funny because I remember when I first found out, I went home and I ran to my mom and I was like, Mom, she's like, what? I'm like, Hannah's Jewish. Can you believe it? She's so nice though. She was like, oh boy, like, okay, let's sit down. So we sat down, but it was so interesting because that experience, honestly, one was shocking, and two was really important for me to witness that sometimes like the unconscious messages that, or messaging in general, whatever you consume, creates all kinds of different subconscious beliefs. And until you witness the opposite of that in your reality, you won't change those beliefs. And unfortunately, I mean, a lot of people who stay within their communities, within their lanes, they don't experience the tragic of having those beliefs shattered. I'm really grateful that, for the life experiences that I've had that really have had to force me out of what I knew and to see that. So we ended up writing our college essays about each other. We didn't go to the same place. I went to Emory because she applied. I didn't know what Emory was to begin. And I studied the anthropology, psychology, and the history of sharing meals. I was really fascinated by this idea of sharing food because what really brought Hannah and I together was our love for baking. Our families would start to have dinners together, which was also so interesting. I never thought, like before coming here, I never thought I would ever have a friend who was Jewish, which sounds so crazy in the United States because it's so diverse. But in Syria, where like Israel is referred to as the imperialist enemy in our history textbooks, it's like unheard of. So I'm very, very grateful. And in college, I met I was working with a lot of Syrian refugee women and other refugees that would come to the US and, like few months, I would see them trying to set up food businesses, but it was very difficult. So I ended up setting a program through Emory and worked with students to help them do that. But it was always the same pattern, people sharing food and building community through food. So I ended up writing my college dissertation on it and studied, what's the history of this? What's the psychology? Why is it that sharing meals helps us see each other in each other? And why does it help bring us together? So, it's like humans have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. It's nothing new. But it's like, it's honestly really like magical. And if you think about it, there's a lot of things that human beings share that we do on the daily, but sharing food is the one thing that we can do together. You can't like take a shower or sleep with everybody, obviously. But sharing these is one way to make it more accessible. So I went on to grad school and I came back and I was really lonely over the last year. I think everybody was, but I realized that this was not just new. It was a combination of both COVID and just suddenly being outside of a structure. I had been living with friends for, the last 5 years before that. And suddenly all my friends are abroad. Everybody's in a different continent. And I was like, wait a second. So how do I do this again? So I started to call friends who have graduated in the last 5 to 8 years. I literally made the list and I was like, okay, so how do you make friends after school? And it was so interesting. Everybody had all kinds of different answers. And I remember I was on a call with one of my friends in St. Andrews in Scotland, where I went to grad school. in November. Vividly remember the day, November 30th of 2020. And it was 10 a.m. my time. I was supposed to be at work, technically. Don't tell my boss. My boss should not see this. I think she'll be fine seeing that now. But anyways, and I was telling him, like, God, I wish this thing existed. Like, there's all these apps, but there's like, it takes so long to meet someone in person. And it's like, even when you meet in person, sometimes it's like such a hit or miss. And I just wish there was something that existed that, like you could just sign up to share a meal with a group of people that you share something with, in common with, like next week or today if you want. Because I'm sure there's other young people like at home right now that want to do that. Like there's not. And he goes, go do it. And I'm like, oh my God, like, whoa. And literally I hung up. I texted my manager that I was quote unquote sick. I spent the entire day until like 3 a.m. researching. I ended up putting together a pitch deck, and literally 4 days after, I had a call that I had scheduled that was like completely unrelated, but it was with someone who's an entrepreneur and an investor in Silicon Valley, just very serendipitous. I actually interviewed for one of the startups that he founded, and I didn't end up working with him, but we just got in touch. And I told him about the idea that I came up with 4 days before. He's like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, put 10K on a credit card. This is how you do this. Go on this website, that website, etc. And even though, we didn't end up continuing to work together, but that just gave me like a push, like, oh, like there's something here. I need to like listen to this and see what else is there. I then got connected to Olivia, who I had, been talking to for a while, and we went to the same school, obviously. And Olivia was like, apply to day one. I was like, I don't know.
Wow.
I wasn't ready yet. I think I was also working full time. So I kept working full time / like squeezing interviews of, with users, with different people, developers, all through in my work schedule. And it got to the point in April where I decided like, okay, I need to leave my job because I felt honestly my time was worth a lot more to me spent building this than working as a junior research strategist. Not that working as that is anything bad. I'm really, really grateful. I learned so much. But it wasn't like a easy decision. Everybody was like, so how long have you been working for? And I go, 8 months. And they're like, you're quitting your job to do what? I'm like, just start a company. And they're like, okay, great. That's a great plan. But I'm really grateful. My family's currently, my mom, even on a resident salary, she's like supporting me financially, which is insane. And I know I'm gonna pay her one day back. But to be honest, there's like something that's so strongly pulling me forward. And the summer when I was with Day One, I'm so grateful I did Day One. I really, really am. I think it gave me it was preparing me. So I feel like I was putting the building blocks for all the momentum that I'm seeing now, because I wasn't, I didn't have any users signed up. I had some, I like put up my landing page. I also changed the concept a lot at Day One. Initially, It was going to be a virtual situation, and then one-on-one, people can swipe right and left. And the more interviews that I did, the more research that I did, I was like, okay, that's not going to work. We need something completely different. And I'm shocked. As soon as I started to put things out, the pilot is happening starting next week, and it's happening for 3 weeks. I have 3 restaurants I'm working with. Are you ready for this, Andrew?
I want to hear it.
98 people signed up for the pilot.
Oh my gosh. Okay, here let me ask you a quick question to structure the rest of your story. Is so inspiring, and I think everyone listening to this needs to go hang out with you and go find Ocala. But I have 2 questions before we get into really this pilot and the things that you've been building, because one is you already alluded to this like moment. It was actually like a moment where you had a friend give you a push, and then it kind of simmered for a little bit, and then you quit a job, and then it happened. But take me through that. Was it that much of a moment? You kind of hit 2 sort of important sort of pushings off the edge. So maybe my question to you is a little less of how did it happen, but like, how did it feel, right? What was it like for you to go from, experiences? Because some of that story, I'm sure, only seems so clean in hindsight. I'm sure you're just living life, right? Things were happening. So what was it like to go through? Every day, Andrew. What was it like to go through that experience of going from like, I've got this passion, I've got this insight, I have this urge, and now people are pushing me off the edge. I don't know. Take us through that moment, because everyone in the world is about to experience this.
It's definitely not just one moment, to be honest. Before doing Ocala, I was also working on a production company a docu-series called Talk With Your Mouth Full, where I was working with my co-founder on literally bringing strangers together to share meals at tables hosted by immigrant chefs. So I had been witnessing the magic and how easy it can be to really create such an intimate, wholesome experience with complete strangers over food. So it hadn't, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, one moment, like completely like light bulb. That's the idea. I've been seeing that magic for, I mean, like years before starting. But I think what's really pushed me is the urgency. I think that's it, honestly. The urgency of this needs to happen now, and I need to do it now. And oh my God, there definitely was, after I quit my job, I spent literally a month and a half to 2 months just delving into a lot of personal development workshops to work through a lot of limiting beliefs, like I'm too young to do this, I'm too like X to do this. And I realized like all of these ideas are never mine, like none of these are mine. And I did a lot of hypnotic meditations, and to be honest, like through that you'll see like, oh, this is where I picked that up from. Like there was that TV show, there's that person that said the thing, and I thought it was like the truth, but it's not. And so I'm really, really grateful. It took me some time to really be able to step into it, and I think it's like, I'm really grateful I'm doing this, to be honest. I think the best way to learn and grow as a person, if you want to do it fast, people say like start a family. I'm like, start a company.
No, it's so real. And I mean, you said something that I want to call out for anyone who's listening, which is these types of moments of magic and the momentum you have.
Yeah.
Like you said, it wasn't a moment. It really wasn't close to overnight. It was your whole experience. But then you said something. You were doing this. You were doing a project. You were doing a thing that had a start and a finish. It wasn't meant to be this rocket ship of a startup, but you were just living your passion. And I think everyone needs to just internalize that, which is if you see a problem in the world and you're like, how do I get started on building something? Just chunk it down into a project, chunk it down into an event, and get the people together and then see the magic happen, right? And your momentum will accelerate.
Exactly. That's been something I've been reflecting on recently, because to be honest, like what I'm doing is not easy. Like getting restaurants, especially the kinds of restaurants that I want to partner with, typically small, family owned, independent, like, you know, like most of them are immigrant. It's not easy to get them to like say yes to this, and it was hard. I went on I mapped out so many different coffee shops and restaurants in Manhattan and Brooklyn, just on my foot, like talking to them day after day until, you know, they were like, yeah, sure. And the only, I would ask myself like, why am I doing this? I meant to ask myself this all the time, like, so much, but something so strongly, like, I don't know what to call it, like a sense of conviction. I don't know what it is, but I know it's going to be worth it. I don't care what it's going to be. Like in my heart, I want this to be a global company, and it needs to be, because honestly, I'm now posting on all kinds of different Facebook groups, and people from all countries are like, can I get this already? And like, I don't know, Bangladesh. And I'm like, yes, one day soon, I hope. And that's been so awesome to see. So, but to get to the place where now I'm getting the feedback from people that are like, this is awesome. Like, yes, that's been pushing me a little bit more. But the month before, where I was not seeing any of that, nobody was saying yes, nobody was signing up. It was literally me on my computer, just like refreshing that Airtable form. Like, okay, did anyone sign up? Nobody signed up yet. The only thing that pushed me through is just knowing that this needs to happen. It needs to happen now, and people want it, and I know they do. And I think it's just like blind faith. And I also think that in retrospect, I tend to be a little bit more risk averse. I think my life circumstances have primed me to be able to be here. And I think a lot of young adults my age, and I've struggled with this a lot, like, oh, I could be having a really great salary right now, like living in a great apartment, etc. But I'm choosing this life, and I'm continuing to choose it every day, because I know it's going to be worth it, regardless of what the outcome will be. The lessons will be so worth it.
Not just the lessons. Like the lessons, right? Like the journey you take with you is as valuable as the outcome, one way or the other.
The sense of uncertainty as well. Like I was telling my roommate the other day, it feels like I just arrived. The feeling that I have now about what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 2 months, I don't know I have no idea. Like I really don't. I have no clue what's going to happen. And it kind of feels like when I moved here 8 years ago, I had no idea what's going to happen. I was terrified. I remember crying every day, like begging my mom to go back. But it ended up being so much better than anything I could imagine. I'm way beyond grateful. Like my life today in the US is nothing close to anything I could even dream of. Nothing
Amazing.
close.
So give everyone, so we've talked about Ocala a little bit. Folks probably have a sense of it because of what you just described,
Yeah.
but give us the short pitch. Because then I want to ask you a little bit about how it's been and what you're learning.
Yes. So Ocala is a social networking platform that connects users in small groups at local restaurants for discount prices.
And I love to hear this. Where does the name Ocala come from? That's my favorite.
Oh, I didn't mention that. Okel in Hebrew, Okel actually in Hebrew means to eat, and in Arabic, akil, okel, different accents will say same word, also means to eat. And that to me was, I mean, when I was thinking about
Oh my
names, I was like,
gosh.
okay, sharing food with people that I never thought I'd be friends with, my like Jewish best friends, like it just came like that. I was like, yeah,
I
easy.
mean,
Like,
it's too good. It's one of my favorites. I just like get emotional just hearing you
oh,
say
thank
that,
you.
just because it represents such like good in the world, and that whole premise is real. And now is the time. So I'm the biggest believer in what you're doing. I'm a customer the second I'm back in New York or it comes upstate, or it's absolutely so. So you've already hit on a lot of the things. You mentioned something really like really personal about the development of getting past limiting beliefs. What else have you been learning or lessons that you've internalized over the last, chunk
Yeah.
of time, whether it's through the day one program, since before? What's it been like building this business? And what would you pass along to somebody else who's maybe
Yeah.
one step behind you?
Honestly, it's all trial and error. Like everything is a trial and error. How I word emails, depending how someone responds, and I like end up wording something else, and then I see that works better. Everything's been a learning curve. I think one the big lesson is like talk to people, and don't let no be the answer. Like don't give up too fast. And I honestly think like if there's an idea you're willing to give up on, that means it might not be the right idea, which is a good thing because that might be there's another good idea that is waiting for you to really be willing to work on. But I think if I didn't really believe in this, there are a lot of, I mean, there's still a lot of tears happening. I don't think if I didn't so hardly believe in this, I would not sign up. No, I wouldn't sign up to do this. Like you have to really believe in it so hard, so much, like put your life on it and be willing to get through the month, 2 months. I don't know however long it takes for things to start to have a sense of momentum. Um, and then the other thing is, and I learned this from day one, I'll be honest, like be obsessed with the problem and not the solution. And I'm so behind that. I mean, even now the pilot solution, that could not, I mean, who knows? Talk to me tomorrow, we'll see. I don't know. People seem excited, but we'll see how that works. And I'm not obsessed with what the solution looks like, but I know, and honestly, like I've actually literally been ideating different things. Like, okay, if this doesn't work out, what can I tweak
Yeah.
the next time I pilot it so that something else works out? So yeah, focus on the problem and not the solution, and talk to users. I surveyed 112 people from like 9 countries, 16 different cities or something like that. And I called a lot of them. And that was so incredibly helpful and honestly shocking because that helps get you motivated more because it really gets you closer to the problem. And hearing a lot of my friends say how lonely they are sucks. I'm like, okay, I mean, commiserating,
Yeah.
yes, I'm like, great, I'm not alone. Like I've also been lonely, but hearing other people say it, I'm like, okay, like that's not normal. And why are we settling for this? Like, no.
Yeah. There's that like well of motivation that people are pouring into when they say, me too.
Yeah.
I have that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's,
100%.
can you fix this? Are you working on it? And oh my gosh, everything you said, there's really a both and where you need to just try things. And well, they're not even counterfactual. They just go in like a circle where you try things, then you learn, and then you try the next thing.
Right.
And if you have to close that learning loop, if you don't hear from these 92 pilot signups that
98.
how it went,
98.
they'll tell you where to go next, right? They'll tell
Yeah.
you where to go next.
Yeah.
And the fact that you just ship and do is so inspiring. So tell us a little bit about how you're getting to market with this pilot. A little bit of like, where are you going next? What's live?
Yeah.
Someone wants to sign up. Where do they sign up? But tell us a little bit of
Yeah.
the what first.
So right now the pilot is happening in New York City for the next 3 weeks. The ultimate purpose of the pilot is really to learn how are people experiencing it? Like, how often are they, interested in having those meals per month? And it was interesting because I noticed like the forum, I've gotten a lot of feedback on the forum. Initially it was a lot longer than it is now, and now it's shortened, but even now I still get people that are saying like, that's kind of a barrier to entry. I'm like, well, 98 people signed up, you know, and I'm still keeping those questions because it's free data. And I'm intentionally doing that because, you know, companies pay thousands of dollars to get the data that I'm getting now just from the sign up form. So I'm keeping it as is. Honestly, I don't want more people to sign up for the pilot. This is great. I'm not ready to have more people to sign up. So from the pilot, I have a list of questions, obviously, that I want to ask myself, and I'm going to be at those meals tomorrow. I'm going to be observing. I'm going to ask the restaurant. I've served at a restaurant before. I don't know if she's going to let me, but I really, really hope. I want to pretend to be a server. See,
That is
I hope,
so
I hope
awesome.
I'm like praying that works.
User research, that's the most
Yeah.
exciting user research tactic I've ever heard of. Pretend to be a server.
That's my
That's your
background.
ethnographic. Pretend to
Yeah.
be a server so you can observe your product in
Yeah.
action. Oh
People
my
don't know what I
goodness.
look like. I've just been emailing them. They don't know what I look like though. So, but I will be participating in actual meals after tomorrow. I put myself in different ones. And more, it's been so interesting. A lot of people have signed up for more than one. So I've given them like a 3-week, like thing. And a lot of people have signed up for like 2 or 3. Most people have signed up for 2, and that's like really good feedback for me. But I'm really interested to see what comes out of it and how I can monetize it. Because I also want to ask, like, okay, well, how much are you willing to pay for this per month, and how many meals would you want to have access to per month? But also on the restaurant side, because right now I don't charge the restaurant anything. It's not my intention at all to like monetize, the profitability of the model from the restaurant owners, especially given like, one, I really have a heart for immigrant restaurant owners. I mean, I've done a lot of my research on it. But 2, they really need people right now.
Yeah.
But they offer a lot of different kinds of discounts. So, I think this pilot with, a Wix website and Airtable form is informing a lot of what the actual application is going to look like for both restaurants and users. Like, how can a restaurant, create their own special on the app? Can people like there needs to be an average kind of spending. There's
Yeah.
a lot of the questions that I'm getting now, like, oh, how much do you think I'll spend, or like, what's the kind of discount I want to know. It's all informing. That needs to be a feature in the product so that people know what they're signing up for. There needs to be reviews, all kinds of things.
The next Airbnb is brewing. I think we're watching it happen, which
Oh, I'm
is
so excited. Yes.
I mean, as universal as travel is eating, right? And meeting new people, and in our world that just got that much more spread out, and everyone is a little more cloistered in their homes. There's not a better time for this to spring up. And so we are rooting for you. I know everyone listening is keen to try it. I just can say that universally. So Farah, we need you to build faster so we can have Ocala roll out universally. No, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspiring. I know folks will want to get in touch with you and get in touch with Ocala. Give us the URL so we have it.
joinocala.com. Please sign up for the wait list. I've been asked to like get it to 1,000 by tomorrow.
Ocala is OKEL. Joinocala.com.
Joinocala.com. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Farah, thank you so much for sharing your story. We've loved having you in day one, and this has been a pleasure. So bye, everyone. See you around.